McLaren CEO Zak Brown didn't mince words when he said Red Bull was inappropriate in how it handled Max Verstappen on track during his collision with Lando Norris at the Austrian Grand Prix. Brown was unimpressed by Red Bull's refusal to provide guidance to Max Verstappen in his clash with Norris, as well as Christian Horner's apparent blame for the McLaren driver. In a conversation with Sky Sports F1 between FP1 and FP2 during the British Grand Prix weekend, Zak Brown was asked if he agreed with Christian Horner telling Max Verstappen over radio after the Austrian Grand Prix that Lando Norris did not act properly. Brown immediately rejected the claim. "I thought that was very incorrect," he said. "I think it's inappropriate to be feeding your driver information that I think the rest of the world saw differently, including the stewards. I think Verstappen's 10-second penalty was the right decision. You have to leave a driver a full car width and Verstappen didn't, and that's disappointing because that's not very sporting. But that's kind of what we've come to expect out of his behaviours. If you've forgotten, Verstappen's late pit stop in the final stages of the Austrian Grand Prix allowed Lando Norris to close the 7-second gap between the two cars and challenge for the race lead. Norris attempted numerous different attempts and was turned down each time. On lap 63, Norris ran off the course in an effort to overtake Verstappen. Norris briefly had the lead before losing it to Verstappen. Norris received a 5-second penalty for violating track limits for the 4th time during the race, which Red Bull did not inform Verstappen of. On lap 64, Verstappen and Norris made contact. Both got tyre punctures and had to hobble back to the pits. Norris retired. Verstappen changed tyres and returned to the circuit, finishing 5th. Brown was particularly disappointed that Red Bull did not advise Verstappen on how to race differently or about Norris's penalty. You would have preferred Red Bull to say, "Look, Max, you can't do that," or given him some guidance. Brown was asked by Ted Kravitz, "Yeah, that's what we would do. We would 100% if we feel our drivers need to do something to perform differently or be cautious on track limits or whatever the case may be. We definitely feed our drivers messages to be careful, and they did it in fact." Lando had a 5-second penalty, and which is a whole different story, because I don't think when you make a move and you go off and give the position back, you should get a track limit for that. And had he done, maybe Max would have said, "Well, let me just tuck in behind him and win this thing 2 seconds behind." But they didn't inform him, and I don't know why they wouldn't give him that information, because Max is a very intelligent driver, and he maybe would have decided there was a different way to race for the win. But they chose not to give him that information. McLaren team chief Andrea Stella believes his team has gathered data, videos, facts, analysis, and GPS to indicate Max Verstappen definitely turned under braking while dueling Lando Norris in the final circuits of the Austrian Grand Prix. Yes, the conversations about Austria are still going strong, and McLaren's Andrea Stella added context to the conversation by saying he's certain his team will show Verstappen deserves a more critical eye from the stewards. After practice for the British Grand Prix, Andrea Stella told Sky Sports that the McLaren team was ready to move on from the Austrian Grand Prix, but there was still work to be done in the stewarding department. "There are different things to consider here," Stella said. "The first one is that Lando, he's the one that needs to drive, to sort of move on. Like if you stay with your head 1 week ago, you're not going to do a good job here in Silverstone. We see that the car is competitive, and we definitely want to capitalise. So Lando is looking forward, and we support this point of view. The second consideration is that at no point this is a personal matter. At no point there's an attempt, certainly not from us, to polarise the views. It's black or it's white. That's not the case, I think, anywhere in the world. There is polarisation. When? That's not what we want. But for me, there are data, videos, facts, analysis, GPS data, which we spent quite a lot of time trying to confirm our initial opinions. I have to say that our initial opinions were confirmed. So Max did turn under braking, Stella was asked. Yes, definitely, he asserted. And like I said straight after the race, if these manoeuvres were addressed immediately with a warning with a black and white flag, I think there would have been no escalation. This is clear, I think, to the stewards as well. Now is the time to move on. Learn as much as possible for the opportunities that we had, and there was a lot of information coming from Austria to put Formula One in a better position in terms of policy and enforcing the regulations that are already in place as to how you go racing. And then we look at this weekend now. While it may appear like McLaren wants this discourse to focus solely on the headlines, Andrea Stella denies that is the team's intention. In fact, Stella claims that it does not need to speak directly with Red Bull because McLaren's point of contact is higher up the chain of command. Our counterpart in this kind of conversation is actually the FIA. Like I said before, there's nothing personal, there's nothing polarized. I think I said immediately, I have a lot of respect for Red Bull, for Max, for what they have achieved, but our counterpart is the FIA and the stewards. We just sought clarification and we were actually satisfied with the answer we received from the stewards and the FIA. Horner told Sky Sports F1 on Friday, before the news conference with Brown, that he believed the confrontation between Verstappen and Norris began a week earlier at the Spanish Grand Prix. Pole sitter Norris forced Verstappen off track in the first race of F1's European triple header, which concludes at Silverstone, as the McLaren driver attempted and failed to keep the Red Bull behind him. While neither Verstappen nor Norris mentioned the Spanish Grand Prix start in light of what happened in Austria, Horner believes the two are related. For me, that incident started a week earlier on the run down to Turn 1 at Barcelona, where Lando had him on the grass, Horner said. You are seeing they are starting to get feisty. These guys are racing each other and racing hard throughout their careers. You know what Max is like. He will fight for every inch of tarmac. I'm sure Lando will learn from that, and Max too. Horner anticipates no let-up from either driver, with Red Bull and McLaren expected to be closely matched once more this weekend. It's hard racing between the two of them, he added. They have spoken about it, and obviously it's been rowed back a bit from where Lando's position was, understandably, following the emotion after the race. I'm sure we are going to see more hard racing between the two of them over the second half of the year. You learn from it and move on. Since the Austrian Grand Prix, Brown and Andrea Stella have been very clear. Max Verstappen was to blame for the incident with Lando Norris and should have received harsher punishment. Both have also argued that Verstappen's present conduct demonstrate that there was not adequate intervention in the past. When asked to comment on Brown's words, Marco stated he hadn't heard them. When presented with Zak Brown's assertions, especially that Red Bull would encourage Max's behaviour, that Red Bull has issues with fathers, and that Red Bull would face more HR issues, Marco answered with surprise. We don't have any issues with fathers. And I was very disappointed about the way Norris was, during a fantastic fight, was starting complaining like a nanny. Whereas Norris backtracked on his words in the United Kingdom. Admitting that he may have overreacted, McLaren's CEO did not. I guess an annoyed attack, yes, so maybe he must find the line within his team. Let them race. Well, if the drivers had figured it out before the race, with Lando and Max declaring their never-ending friendship, it seems that their teams are not so happy to throw their weapons just yet. Who do you think will claim this weekend's race victory? Let us know in the comments down below.